Welcome, students. In this video, I am going to summarize Chapter 3 and tell you what to look for in Chapter 4. Chapter 3 starts off at Gatsby's little parties. Now, Gatsby's parties aren't little. They're absolutely massive. They happen every single week. Hundreds of people come. They conduct themselves like it's an amusement park. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at these parties. So first off, we have to notice what's being served at these parties. Tons and tons and tons of food. He's got buffets garnished with hors d'oeuvres, hams, pigs, turkeys, and in fact, he has a second supper served after midnight to keep his guests happy. So tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of food. But in addition to the food, he's got a ton of alcohol. He's got an open bar that everybody just comes to, and he serves alcohol for free. It's stocked with gins and liquors and cocktails, and it's always in full swing the entire time. But we have to think to ourselves, wait, this is 1923. It's unconstitutional at this point to buy and distribute and sell alcohol in America right now because of prohibition. So where is Gatsby getting all of this alcohol? How is he bringing it to his house? How did he get all of this alcohol? So in addition to everything that he serves, these parties last all night, and they don't end until 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then after that, it takes the servants a whole weekend to clean up afterwards. The music. Gatsby doesn't just hire his uncle's friend for $1,000 for these parties. No, he has a live band, but not just any band. He has an entire orchestra every single weekend with oboes and trombones and saxophones and piccolos and high drums. Gatsby is hiring a symphony every weekend for all of these parties. So you get free food, free admission, free alcohol, and a free concert. You just come and you have fun and you leave whenever you want to. Now, most people just show up without an invite. Nick is the only one who receives an invitation. A chauffeur in uniform of robin eggs blue crosses Nick's lawn one Saturday morning with a polite, formal note from his employer. The honor would be entirely Gatsby. It said if I would attend his little party. Signed J. Gatsby in majestic hand. We have to ask ourselves the question, why is Nick getting special treatment? Later that night, Nick shows up to this party, and he's doing what he does best, walking around awkwardly with his hands in his pocket, not knowing with whom to speak, so he feels uncomfortable, so he starts to drink. Luckily, Jordan Baker shows up, and he's like, hey, I know you, and now they start to walk around the party together. Tons of rumors are circulating around about Gatsby. Everyone comes to his house. They drink his alcohol, they eat his food, they swim in his pool, they party on his lawn, but nobody knows who the guy is. So there's only mysterious rumors floating around about him. Some of these rumors are that he killed a man. Someone else suggests that he fought for the Americans in World War I. Someone else says that can't be true. I knew some guy who grew up with him in Germany. He fought for the Germans in World War I. And then someone else was like, well, he clearly was a spy for the Germans or the Americans, or he's double. Nobody knows where he is, but a lot of people are kind of scared about him. He said, some people are like, he may have killed a man. And another person says, well, he doesn't want any trouble with anybody. One person ripped her dress. Gatsby goes out of his way, finds this woman, finds her a dress, buys her a new dress for $265, sends it to her. Now, I put $265 into an inflation calculator. In 1923, $265 today in 2021, it's over $4,000. Gatsby sure goes out of his way to make sure that everybody likes him and nobody wants any trouble with him. That's a little weird. That's strange. Okay. Jordan suggests that he was educated at Oxford, which is a fancy smancy school over in Europe, but she doesn't believe it. Now, later in the night, we go into Gatsby's library. Now, this isn't some tiny bookshelf here. This is a massive library. It's kind of like the library that Beast has in the Beauty and the Beast. And there's an interesting character there. We're going to call him Allies. And Allies is looking all around. And he's like, I don't believe who this Gatsby is. I think this whole thing is a show. So he's walking around and he says, what do you think to Nick and Jordan? About what? About that, as a matter of fact, you needn't bother to ascertain. I've ascertained they're real. What's real? The books. They're real. Evidently, Allies has been drunk in this library for over a week. He sees Gatsby. He's kind of the shady, fishy character, mysterious guy, and he's thinking that this whole thing is a facade. So he pulls off the books, thinking they're going to be made out of cardboard, and by extension, he's thinking that Gatsby is a fake. But he's like, whoa, these books are absolutely real. So there's that interesting scene. Now, later, Nick and Jordan leave the library, and Nick is now feeling much better. He's no longer feeling awkward. He's had 2 huge glasses of champagne. He's feeling good about himself, and he starts talking to the guy next to him. This guy next to him, they start talking about World War I. They both evidently served in World War I, and this guy's like, he had just bought a hydroplane. He's like, hey, would you like to go out on a hydroplane with me, old sport? And Nick's like, yeah, I would love that. That would be fun. This is kind of a weird party because I've been here for a while. I was invited, but I don't know the host, and I'm feeling, this is a weird party. This guy looks at him and is like, wait, I don't know. What are you talking about? And then he says, I'm Gatsby. Nick's like, what? I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. I thought. And then Gatsby says, I thought you knew, old sport. Evidently, I've not been a very good host. Yeah, not a good host. You got a private invitation to this huge party, endless food, endless alcohol, an invitation to go on a hydroplane. Yeah, Gatsby, you're a terrible host. You need to up your game. And then comes this smile. He smiled at me understandingly, more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with the quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. It faced or seemed to face the whole external world for an instant and then concentrated on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. It understood you just as far as you wanted to be understood, believed in you as if you would like to believe in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that, at your best, you hope to convey. Folks, I hope that somebody during your life looks at you the way Gatsby looks at Nick. Nick is taken aback by this. He's like, whoa, I love this in the movie right here. Like literally there are fireworks going off when Gatsby's like, I'm Gatsby. Now, in this moment, when Nick finally meets Gatsby, there's something that pulls him out of this. There's a butler comes up to Gatsby and says, I beg your pardon, Gatsby. Someone is on the line. Chicago is on the line. And Gatsby's like, excuse me, old sport. I'll talk to you later. I got to go take this phone call. Now, this phone call is interesting. It's a Saturday night. It's probably coming up till midnight. And Gatsby gets a phone call from Chicago in the middle of the night. He's like, excuse me, old sport. I've got to take this business phone call. So, what is going on? Well, later, Jordan is Gatsby requests a private audience with Jordan, and they disappear for over an hour. In the meantime, Nick is people watching, and he's drunk again, and everybody's cheating on their spouse. Anyway, an hour goes by. Jordan comes out from this meeting with Gatsby, and she's like, Nick, I've just heard the most amazing news. How long were we in there? He's like, an hour. It was simply amazing, Jordan repeated. But I swore I wouldn't tell it, and here I am tantalizing you. So she basically says, Gatsby just spilled the tea. I want to spill the tea to you, but I promised I wouldn't spill the tea. This is an important part of the plot. Anyway, she's got to go. Her party, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. The rest of her party's leaving, so she has to go. Then after that, Gatsby comes up, stands to Nick. Nick says, I'm sorry, I didn't know you earlier. Gatsby's like, it's all right, old sport. Don't worry about that. Remember, we're going up in the hydroplane tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. In a few hours, they're going to go out on the hydroplane. Nick needs to sleep that hangover off before it goes. Anyway, there's this long offer, goodbye, 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 goodbye. It's almost like a Zoom conference. You just never know how to say goodbye. And then we get the best drunk driving scene in the history of American literature. Allies is there. No one knows who crashed the car. Eventually, they figure out that one of the wheels came off. Now, at the end of this chapter, something interesting happens. The last few pages are incredibly interesting. Remember, it's Nick, the narrator, and he's telling this story to us, and he's telling it as a book. So Nick is reading his draft. He's like, all right, I've got the first 3 pages or the first 3 chapters of my book finished. And he, like any good author, he reads those and it's like, okay, I can, and he sees where he can make some improvements. And then he says this. Reading over what I've written so far, I see I've given the impression that the events of 3 nights several weeks apart were all that absorbed me. On the contrary, they were just 3 casual nights in a very crowded summer. Let me translate that for you. Dear reader, I may have given you the mistaken impression that I'm obsessed with Gatsby. I'm not obsessed with Gatsby because so many other things were happening in my life at the time. Yeah, okay, Nick. So then he spends the next 2.5 pages telling us and trying to convince us that he's not obsessed with Gatsby. I don't buy it. Well, at the very end of this, he says this: everyone suspects himself of at least one of the cardinal virtues, and this is mine. I am one of the few honest people that I know. How honest are you, Nick? Because I don't think you're very honest. You say you're honest, but you're falling in love with Jordan Baker. Do you remember at the end of chapter 1 where Tom and Daisy were like, Nick, we heard you were engaged. It has to be true. And Nick's like, I'm not engaged, but right here, literally a few lines above it, before he allows himself to fall in love with Jordan, he's like, I've been writing letters once a week to a girl back home, signing them, love, Nick. So clearly he's in a long-term romantic relationship with the girl back home that he needs to break up with before he can allow himself to have feelings for Jordan. But just a few paragraphs earlier, he admits to us that he had a fling with the girl from the office that probably wasn't just platonic, and he broke up with her by ghosting her. So, Nick, exactly how honest are you? You're cheating on your girl back home with at least 2 people at this point, maybe even 3 if you read the end of chapter 2 very closely. And I mean, he does say he's one of the honest few people that he knows. So if his bar is the Buchanans and how dishonest they are, well, it's kind of easy to be more honest than the Buchanans. Now, Jordan also is dishonest because he makes a few notes of her. She was recently involved in a golf tournament scandal where she moved her ball from a bad lie, and then she lied about it. And then the few witnesses retracted their statements, probably because she paid them off. She also borrowed somebody's car, left the top open, it rained, it ruined the interior. She lied about that. And she almost kills a pedestrian. Oh, it's right here. They're driving together, and then where is it? They drive by. She passed so close to some workman, a construction worker, that her fender flicked the button of the man's coat. So she basically nearly runs this guy over. The car hits the man's clothing. Nick says, "You're a rotten driver." She says, "I'm careful." "No, you're not." "Well, other people are," Jordan said lightly. What does that got to do with it?" "They'll keep out of my way," said Jordan. "It takes 2 people to get into an accident." And then Nick says this: "Suppose you meet somebody just as careless as yourself." Jordan says, "I hope I never will. I hate careless people, and that's why I like you." So that's the end of chapter 3. Nobody's honest. All right, chapter 4. Now we're going to start to understand why Gatsby was singling out Nick. It turns out it has really nothing to do with friendship. Gatsby is getting close to Nick to use him for some sort of other purposes. So chapter 4 is all about Gatsby earning Nick's trust. So they decide to go out on a lunch date in New York City. And then Gatsby, on the way, on the drive there, he says, "Check out my car, old sport. It's a wonderful car." And then he gives his autobiography to Nick on the way to New York City. But he starts his autobiography with a few things that are a little bit fishy. Number one, he was like, "Hey, I know there are crazy rumors about me. I'm going to put those rumors to rest." And then he says, "I'll tell you God's truth about my past." Anytime someone starts their story with, "I'm going to tell you God's honest truth," you should kind of be a little bit skeptical. And then we're going to go meet another character in New York City by the name of Meyer Wolfsheim. Now, in the 1920s, if you were to have read this book, you'd have been like, "Oh, that's based on a real person." So the real person that Meyer Wolfsheim is based off of is this guy, Arnold Rothstein. Now, Arnold Rothstein, here is the Wikipedia article about him. His nickname was the Brain. He was an American racketeer, crime boss, businessman, and gambler who became the kingpin of the Jewish mob in New York City. If you read this book 100 years ago, you would have known exactly who Wolfsheim was based off. It was this guy right here. He was widely reputed to have organized corruption in professional athletics, including conspiring to fix the 1919 World Series. Arnold Rothstein got in contact with the team that was favored to win in the 1919 World Series, paid them to lose on purpose so that he could make millions of dollars with illegal gambling. He was also the future mentor of crime bosses who later came to the American scene. So that's Arnold Rothstein, and you're going to meet the fictional version of that in chapter 4. And that's going to be one of Gatsby's business partners. Okay, folks, when you're reading chapter 4, ask yourself, do you believe Gatsby and his past? And then you're going to learn that Gatsby and Daisy 5 years ago had a relationship right out of high school. Take care, folks. Keep reading, keep learning.